Chapter 3 of Tractate Beitzah continues discussing the laws of what is and isn't permissible on holidays. The first Mishnah says, in regards to the labor of trapping animals, which is forbidden on Shabbos and holidays, on a holiday you cannot catch fish from a pond, nor can you feed them, but you can catch an animal that's already trapped in an enclosure, and you can feed them. Some say it depends on the type of enclosure. If it can be trapped further, it's not allowed to grab. If it's fully trapped, you can. The Gemara cites some dissenting opinions in regards to trapping birds, but suggests that where it's allowed could be where it's talking about taking it in a roofed enclosure, or it says it's considered trapped in a closet, and it's speaking about a specific species of bird which can't really be domesticated, so it's not considered trapped even if it's driven into a closet. Anyways, that source is talking about a large enclosure, while our Mishnah is talking about a small one. A small enclosure is defined as where you can grab the animal in one lunge inside, or it's where there are not many corners for it to escape to, or it's where the shadows of the walls reach each other, depending on your opinion. It says we follow the opinion that only allows you to grab animals in enclosures where they are considered trapped. An animal that requires trapping is defined as an animal which you bring a trap to catch it, besides for geese and chickens which return to their coop in the evenings, and their subsistence depends on you. So they are already considered trapped. Some say those birds are exceptions, as they don't try to escape their coop, unlike by doves, which do. New Mishnah. If a trap for an animal was set before a holiday, you can't take an animal from the trap on the holiday, unless you knew about it before the holiday. There's also an incident mentioned where this guy gave fish to Rabban Gamliel on a holiday, and he said it would have been permissible to accept it. He personally just didn't accept it here because he just didn't really like the guy. The Gemara discusses some related points. This is discussed. It also says that the fish, in this case, some said it could be accepted, some said it could be eaten. There are related points. There are other cases. If you plug your canal before a holiday, and on the holiday you find fish in the canal, they're permitted. Which also means that if a wild animal went into your orchard and gave birth there before the holiday, you can use it on the holiday itself. The last point is actually disputed as to whether the newborn required designation or otherwise. New Mishnah, you may not slaughter a dangerously ill animal on a holiday unless there's enough time left in the day to eat a roasted olive-sized piece of its meat. Some say even if there's time to eat a raw olive-sized piece of meat after it's slaughtered. If you slaughter it in a field, you may not bring it to your house via pole or litter, but you can carry it in piece by piece. The Gemara gets into some practices of the preparation of certain animals for certain offerings in the temple, such as that they should be skinned and dismembered prior to you eating from them. It's explained that this is proper manners, that you shouldn't rush to eat food like a glutton. You should wait until it's properly prepared. There are similar points, and it says that there are three who are strong: the Jewish people among the nations, the dog among the animals, and the chicken amongst the fowl. Some add the goat amongst the smaller animals, and the caper bush amongst the trees. Beyond not carrying animal parts on poles or litters, there's points on a person not being carried in such a manner on a holiday, and unique times it's permitted to carry a person on your shoulders, such as when there's a public need. New Mishnah. If a firstborn animal fell into a pit on a holiday, an expert can go in and examine it. If it's found to have a permanent blemish, it can be brought up to be slaughtered. Elsewise, no. Some say that even if you find the blemish, if it's found on the holiday, it can't be slaughtered on the holiday, as it's not considered to be prepared. The Gemara says the dispute is about the allowability of having an expert examine animal blemishes on a holiday, but it brought the case of a pit to show that according to the opinion that says you can't remove it, you can't use an expert to remove it as a trick to get the animal out of the pit, even though it's in pain. It discusses how the unique wording of the Mishnah fits like this. There are similar cases discussed, and some say if a firstborn animal was born with a permanent blemish, it can be examined on a holiday, but others disagree. There's also discussion on if something, in general, by the laws of Beitzah, was fit to be used, and then became unfit on Shabbos, and then became fit for use. Some say that once an item becomes muktzah, it's muktzah for the rest of Shabbos. Others say otherwise. It's a debated topic. There's further debate on who we follow in regards to being allowed to examine a firstborn animal on a holiday. There are further proofs brought, along with a related incident. New Mishnah. If an animal died on a holiday, you cannot move it. Once Rabbi Tarfon asked if this was permissible, and also about challah that became impure, and the rabbi said that they couldn't be moved. The Gemara says that some say that the prohibition against moving the animal, as its muktzah, applies to consecrated animals, and we bring sources. New Mishnah. Before refrigerators were invented, people wouldn't slaughter an animal until they had a group of people that had committed to purchasing most of the cuts of the animal's meat. So, people cannot be counted into such a group on a holiday, but they can't be counted prior to the holiday, or they can just slaughter the animal and portion it there on the holiday. The Gemara says that some say the prohibition of forming these groups forbids initially fixing a price to an animal on a holiday. In the event that they decide to slaughter the animal and portion it right there on the holiday, you would take a similar animal for comparison, and after the holiday, the value and measurements would be assessed using that one. New Mishnah. Some say on a holiday you can weigh meat on a balance against a utensil or cleaver. Others say you can't use a scale. The Gemara says the opinion that disallows using the scale on a holiday, that would even disallow storing the meat on a scale for safety, as long as the scale is actually set up on its ring. Some say a professional butcher can't weigh meat in his hand or in water on a holiday. It also says you can't make a handle in the piece of meat on a holiday. That was something that was done so that way the customer could carry the meat home. But some say you can make the hole by hand. You also can mark your meat on a holiday by cutting it into a custom shape, for instance. There's further discussion on using scales on a holiday as to which opinion we hold like. New Mishnah. No sharpening a knife on a holiday, but you can scrape it against another knife. The Gemara qualifies, using a whetstone is not allowed. You can only use it to remove the grease, but you can use a wooden sharpening board to sharpen the knife. Other variations disagree with this. This opinion is in dispute with the opinion that permits preliminaries for food preparation on holidays. There are further discussion on sharpening knives, and it says you cannot straighten out a bent spit, even by hand. There's also argument if a spit that was used to roast meat on a holiday can be handled. Some say you can, even when there's no meat on it, as it's a hazard, so it must be moved out of the way. There are further points. New Mishnah. You cannot tell a butcher to weigh you a certain amount of meat, but you can slaughter and divide the meat between people. The Gemara gives a list of the different terminologies depending on your location of different meat weights. New Mishnah. You can ask someone to fill a vessel for you on a holiday as long as you don't specify a measure. You can't use a measuring cup. Some would measure their goods prior to the holiday and sell them like that, and others said that's a good practice always to pre-measure, so that way it settles and gives you a more accurate measurement. The Gemara says that some disallow a measuring cup for all opinions, and the second opinion would even disallow a vessel that can be used to measure. Some say it means you can't verbally specify a measurement, and the second opinion says you can't use a measuring cup. This is debated on. It also says that the individual who would pre-measure his goods before holidays did so because he wanted to spend more time in the study hall on the holiday. It describes how he did this and related points. There's disagreement if you can sift flour a second time on a holiday, but everyone says it's allowed if like a rock fell inside or something. There are related instances brought. New Mishnah, you're allowed to go to a store that you're accustomed to going and asking for a specific number of eggs or nuts, and that's how people typically talk in regards to these produce, even outside of commercial transactions. The Gemara says a number of similar instances, and says that this is allowed as typically people set a measurement, not an amount of produce. So this is allowed as long as you don't mention the sum of money you're spending. And that's the end of chapter 3.